In this lesson, we'll look very specifically at what goes wrong in typical analytic projects. As a starting place, I'm going to assume that all the business and analytic team members are talented professionals who know how to do their jobs. We're not talking about inadequate skills, incompetence, or laziness. So let's talk about what goes wrong between the teams. In this image, where the top half of the picture is the business in the environment, and the bottom half of the picture is the analytic environment, these two teams operate quite separately. And they're often in different divisions within the organization. Funny double meaning, that word division, isn't it? Typically, a project begins as a request from the business team. Maybe it's marketing, maybe operations. The request is essentially thrown over the fence to the analytic team, who convert it into an analytic design. Then the analysts do their work. There might be an update during that time where the business gets a little bit of information, but mostly the analysts work on their own. Once they have some answers, the analysts pack up the results and throw them back over the fence to the business team. Hopefully the results meet the business team's needs. If not, the business team makes another request and the cycle starts over again, tossing questions and answers back and forth over this figurative fence. Where we often run into trouble is the gap in understanding between the two teams. Each has their own language and context. Unfortunately, in most instances, the handoffs, where we toss these things back and forth, happen without enough discussion. Each side assumes what the other side means, and every time a discussion or request or a document changes hands from one to the other, there's a good chance that something got lost in translation. And that's where things are most likely to go wrong, in those handoffs. Let's identify what could potentially go wrong at each handoff, starting with the first request. At the beginning of the project, there are 3 ways that a project goes off track. First, the business team may not know exactly what they want, or they don't know the analytic language or the data. So they may ask for something but not use the exact right words. Or maybe they haven't even had time to figure out what they need. If you recall in our example, Lee explained what she wanted, and Anna went with the first thing she heard, assuming it was right. The second potential problem then happens because the request was off the mark and the analytic team didn't ask for any clarification. So they move on doing analysis without understanding what really needs to happen. Rather, they assume that they know and they head off to create a design based on incorrect information. So Anna assumed that the business needed that comparison of use rates by user characteristics. I mean, that's what Lee said, right? Well, the third problem is mostly a result of the other two. Neither team has a clear agreement about what needs to happen, and they each have different expectations. Already we see that there is a recipe for trouble. The project proceeded when neither side was on the same page. So that's the first request. Now let's look after the analytic work begins. This all happens at the bottom half of that image, in the analytic environment. Sometimes it goes smoothly, but more often than not, you're working with the data set and something looks different, and so you have to update. They could need a different method or 1,000 other different adjustments that might be required. We need to expect changes during this phase. But what goes wrong is that those changes get communicated either inaccurately or incompletely. And so Lee doesn't understand what Anna needed to change. Take a look at this clip. Hey Lee, just wanted to give you an update. We made some decisions about use rate data. So turns out there's a large portion of people who only use it once and then quit. So we set the low end at 2. And then there's a small group who check multiple times a day, so we truncated it at 1 time max. That's because the outliers were exaggerating the differences. So any concerns about that? Well, I guess whatever you think makes sense. So can we still do the project? Sure. Yeah, it's just a data transformation. Nothing's really changed. Oh, okay. Okay. Will it delay anything? No, not at all. Everything is right on track. It's not a problem. Okay, well, good. Thanks for the update. The first chance for things to go wrong at this phase is that the analyst didn't really explain what needed to be adjusted. And, as we would expect, the second thing that can go wrong is that the business team doesn't understand what those adjustments might mean for the results. And once again, because the two teams don't agree on a new path forward, they proceed with different expectations. Or in this case, it's likely that Lee might have agreed, but she didn't really understand what she was agreeing to. The last place that we can have a project go off track is when we deliver information back. And what can go wrong is the analytic team may not give it in a format that the business understands. Or, related to that, the second potential for problems is where the information was straightforward, but the business team realizes that we answered the wrong question in the first place. And that's kind of what happened in this example with Lee and Anna. Hi, Anna. Thanks again for the tables that you gave us. John is asking what the highest users look like. He's talking about them like super users, and they want to focus on them. So can we tell that from the results you gave us? Well, no, not really. So that's not how we ran things, because we truncated the extremely high users because they were exaggerating the comparisons. So actually we removed the people he might call super users. So does that mean John wants to take the individuals who use it most and describe them? So yes, John would like to do that. So is that something that you guys can run? Sure. So you mean like the top 10%, maybe? Most frequent users? Sure, that sounds just fine. So describe how the top 10% differ from the rest of the users. Yes, describe the super user profile. All right, we can get to that. They realized that the results don't tell us what the CEO really wanted to know. What you see is that all these mishandled handoffs culminate in the two teams disagreeing on whether the project was completed successfully. It's frustrating, isn't it? So I ask you, what do these problems have in common? Well, they're all communication breakdowns. They happen because we haven't fully confirmed our understanding or haven't transferred enough information to each other. So what else do these problems have in common? These issues come up because we feel like we don't have the time, can't take the time, or don't know how to get and give the information we need. I do want to point out something crucial. These communication problems almost never happen because someone is withholding information on purpose. This isn't intentional. But one of the dynamics that evolves is that each team starts to blame the other one for not getting things right. It's one side's fault or the other side's fault. And it's a symptom of the way that business environments work. Things move quickly and we make assumptions. I'd like you to think about projects you worked on in the past that didn't go well. Which one of these things that went wrong contributed to the problem? Was it at the beginning or when you were delivering results? Later in this course, we'll learn a process for mitigating these communication problems. But first, we want to understand the dynamic between business and analytic teams so that we can be better prepared to fix it.